I'm going to open up with something a little bit controversial. It's not actually that hard to create an open world video game, now that we have the hardware that we can render sprawling landscapes and seemingly infinite assets all at once. It seems that overwhelmingly huge video game worlds are a dime a dozen. Heck, Ubisoft phones it in and makes at least 3 every year. However, what is hard is making the world feel alive, and to do that, developers need to build a world that is bustling with NPCs, add picturesque scenery, create little critters that roam around the map, intricately weave lore into the fabric of each town and settlement, and create characters that shine brighter than the already interesting setting. However, above all else, the game needs to deliver a story that holds the player's attention and makes existence within this world more than just a series of fetch quests that ask you to travel across huge, potentially barren wastelands, and thankfully, Genshin ticks every box, from incredible landmarks to colourful characters and a developing storyline that gets more intriguing with each new update. There have been quite a few updates since the game's launch, and as a result, we have been introduced to a series of new regions and a cast of friends and enemies that have helped expand on the already rich tapestry that Genshin has been weaving since its genesis. We have battled sea monsters, ancient dragons, and literal gods throughout Genshin's Archon questlines, and truthfully, it's been a roller coaster from the first day we set off on that beach below Starsnatch Cliff, all in the hope of finding our sibling, who is about as easy to track down as Mona on rent day. Well, this poses the question, which of these moments has been best? Which Archon quests have been the most memorable, exciting, emotional, and shocking? Well, that is the question that we aim to answer today. In this video, I aim to look at all the Archon quests that I have personally powered through and list which ones stand above the rest as the finest quest that Genshin has to offer. It should go without saying, but just in case, spoilers everyone. Okay, on with the show. Here is Genshin Chronicles Best Genshin Impact Archon Quests Ranked. In at number 10 we have Chapter 1 Act 1 of the Land Amidst Monoliths, Rite of Descension. After the incredible events that took place in Mondstadt and the elation that came with freeing Dvalin from his torment, it would have been very easy for Genshin's next region to miss the mark and fail to capture the lightning in a bottle that was the opening chapter. However, I think Liyue did feel across the board to provide an Archon quest that matched Mondstadt note for note, but in terms of opening quests, it was one of the strongest in the game, and the concept of this opening is fantastic. You, the traveller, take off to a new land in search of the Geo Archon, only to find that you've turned up just in time to find his draconic corpse on the ground, and by extension, you are now a murder suspect. Thus begins a mission that sees you have to escape Yicheng Cheris without being captured by the Monoliths. Now, I'll be the first to tell you that the stealth mechanics employed within this quest are lackluster, and that is being kind. However, the jeopardy of play and the expert narrative setup make this one a joy to play through. It's just a shame that aside from encounters with Child, this Archon quest line would be largely dominated by lifeless fetch quests. However, the opening, I can't fault it. In at number 9 we have Chapter 1 Act 2, Farewell Archaic Lord, Guizhong. Okay, so of all listed here, this is one that perhaps makes it in here based on my subjective viewpoint rather than on merit, but hear me out for a second. There are some characters that make a cameo within Archon quests, and most of the time these small windows into their lives fall flat in terms of narrative intrigue and fun. The best example of this is the likes of Yoyima and Ganyu. Well, the same cannot be said for Chi-Chi, the little zombie who works in the Boo Boo Pharmacy. In terms of screen time, we only get to interact with Chi-Chi in this one quest, but it's such fun and so lively, and it essentially serves as one of the most elaborate ways to tell a really cheesy joke, which I absolutely loved. In this quest, we meet Bezu for the first time and get to know Chi-Chi, who, in a world of fantasy magic and surreal powers, feels even more surreal. I mean, how is anyone supposed to be chill with this reanimated child wandering around? Is necromancy commonplace in Teyvat? I suppose it's better not to pry. Her whole demeanour had me smirking throughout, and the questline itself, in search of cocoa goat milk, was pretty good too. Maybe I'm giving this one more credit than it deserves, but I don't care. Chi-Chi deserves more love. In at number 8 we have Chapter 2 Act 2, Stillness, the sublimation of shadow in the name of the resistance. I have my hang-ups with the Inazuma Archon quest as a whole. I feel that the story was pretty high concept, had some complex themes, and had a great premise. However, it felt rushed at times, and a lot of the characters aside from Toma didn't get the time to pop on screen that they might have deserved. One such character that manages to work around that issue and stand out regardless was Goro. I'm a sucker for an underdog story, a tale that sees a few stand against the thousands and come out the other end victorious, and that's why In the Name of Resistance is great. This sees Goro and his men stand against Kozhuzara and the Raiden's army. The odds seem insurmountable, but with the help of the Traveller and Kokomi's tactical excellence, the resistance stands their ground and pushes the Raiden's forces out of Tartasuna. The cutscene depicting this battle was super. We learn a lot about Sara, Kokomi and Goro in the short period of time, plus the player also develops a bond with Tepe, and this is key as the later events involving this character and the tragedy that will befall them simply won't have the same emotional gut punch without the groundwork being laid here in this quest. Overall, a super quest line. In at number 7 we have Prologue Act 3, Song of the Dragon and Freedom, Ending Note. If there is one criticism I would level at the Mondstadt Archon questline, it is that it's a little idealistic in the sense that it's a typical good triumphs over evil storyline. There isn't the same complex, ambiguous and often dark themes that would come in later Archon quests. However, there is one key moment in this questline that sneaks up on the player and delivers a shocking moment just when you thought things were wrapping up for a happy ending. Up until this quest, we don't really know a lot about the Fatui, nor do we know what kind of power that Harbingers possess. What we do know is that the Archon gods aren't to be messed with, and even the happy-go-lucky Venti is still a very powerful god. So knowing that makes it all the more shocking when Signora arrives outside the cathedral and takes Venti's Gnosis by force. This brutality and ruthlessness showed in one moment the power and the evil within the Fatui's ranks, and equally made us fear that we may have lost the Tone Deaf Bard forever. Thankfully, Signora didn't kill the Traveller or Venti in this encounter, and the next time we would be ready for Signora. But more on that later. In at number 6 we have Prologue Act 3, Song of the Dragon and Freedom, A Long Shot. A Long Shot serves as the big finale for the Mondstadt Archon quest, and while it's definitely the weakest finale of the 4 regions so far, it's still a great way to close off this chapter of Genshin's long and winding story. This quest is essentially a more fleshed out version of Storming Terror, a trounced domain that many will play through countless times. It begins the same way that a Dragon Storm did, having you teal Devalon and shoot him as you glide through the air. Then when you ground the majestic beast, the real battle begins. You'll need to wound him, and then when stunned, climb on his back and take out the poison clots which have kept him under the control of the Abyss. Then comes the heartwarming reunion between Barbatos and Devalin as he becomes lucid again, rescuing the group from a fatal fall and delivering them to safety in Mondstadt once again. Venti grants Devalin freedom to simply be without the responsibility of being one of the 4 winds, and for a moment, all feels right in Teyvat, and the people of Mondstadt are safe once again. As I said, it's a little bit too Disney for my liking, but at least Ignore comes in straight after to spice things up. Overall, not the best finale, but a good one. In at number 5 we have Chapter 1 Act 3, A New Star Approaches, Heart of Glaze. The Liyue Archon quest had a strong opening, some highlights in between, and a very strong closing act. However, the parts in between were some of the most dull and lifeless that Genshin has dished up. However, the saving grace in these sections was usually Childe, a multi-layered and menacing character that could be a friend or foe depending on which way the wind blew. We all knew that Childe would turn heel at some point. After all, he is a Fatui Harbinger for a reason. However, we couldn't have imagined just how epic the battle would be. Childe is a worthy adversary in his standard form, but after his foul legacy transformation, you can see just what he's capable of. Childe tries his utmost to decimate you, yet in the end, when the dust settles and the battle is won, you just can't hate the guy. He's inherently likable, and you can see that deep down he has a goodness within him. He's not like the other Harbingers. He actually has a heart. It just freezes over now and again. Hence why he had a backup plan, and before you can give him the punishment that he actually deserves, Asile rises from the deep, and we'll reconvene at the Jade Chamber to discuss that one. In at number 4 we have Chapter 2, Act 3, Omnipresence over Mortals, Duel before the Throne. From one terrifying and imposing Fatui Harbinger to another, we already seen what Signora was capable of before our run-in with her in Inazuma, but this showdown was something else. Inazuma was a pretty lackluster questline by all accounts, but the finale did a lot to make up for its stuttering form throughout. In this quest, you head over to Tenshikaku to confront Signora before raiding Shogun, and as usual, she's dismissive, overconfident, and punching down at every opportunity. However, talk is cheap, and when challenged to a duel before the throne, she is forced to fight the Traveller to the death. The line "till death do us part" still lives rent-free in my head. The battle ends and the Traveller proves their power is much greater than Signora had anticipated, but you always thought that there was some sort of catch. You thought that she would escape or someone would come to save her. However, in a shocking turn of events, the Shogun executes her in her signature ruthless style, breaking the hearts of Signora fans hoping for her banner in the future. While a battle with the Shogun herself is the true finale for Inazuma, this was by far the standout moment, and as a free-to-play player, I still have nightmares about that Signora fight. The amount of food that I used to heal during that battle is laughable. However, it showed that while incredibly strong, the Fatui are not invincible. In at number 3 we have Chapter 1, Act 3, A New Star Approaches, Turning Point. So here we are at the Jade Chamber as promised. Child has been defeated and fled, and before you is the gargantuan behemoth that is Osile. In most finale fights, it's usually the player facing off against a Titan head-on, with maybe some assistance here and there. However, this event really felt like a team effort. With the assistance from the Monolith, Ningguang, and the Adepti, the player is able to take down the sea beast, albeit with great difficulty. Not to mention the sacrifice of the Jade Chamber. Ningguang's sacrifice of her beloved Jade Chamber, the reluctant Adepti coming together for the good of Liyue, it all comes together to offer a cinematic battle of epic proportions, plus the power-up gimmicks bestowed upon the player by Madame Ping, Ganyu, and Zhao make the player feel much more powerful than they ought to be. This entire sequence made me revere Ningguang as a strong leader, which made me all the more shocked when I got access to her as a character and found out she's kind of a mid-tier character. She was kind of done dirty there. It's not the best finale in Genshin, but it's pretty damn close. In at number 2 we have Chapter 1, Act 4, Farewell Archaic Lord, We Will Be Reunited. Okay, I'm gonna get some heat for this, as for many, this is a non-negotiable number 1. However, I don't see it that way for a number of reasons. However, it's more down to the quality of the number 1 I have chosen, rather than anything that this quest is actually lacking. We Genshin players have been left in the dark for quite some time regarding the core plot, and have had to feed on scraps in the form of small peeks behind the curtain in world quests and Archon quests. However, one quest finally focused on the one thing we have been wondering since we set off on our journey. Where the hell's our sibling? In this quest we learn about Dainsleif, Khaenra, and the events that took place over 500 years ago. However, the most shocking revelation is that our sibling appears before us for the first time. They confirm that they are indeed the leader of the Abyss Order, and they refuse to travel with the Traveller, insisting that they must see the Abyss Order's ultimate goal to fruition, and also suggests that the real enemy is none other than Dainsleif. Then before we can squeeze any more information out of them, they disappear through a portal. The revelation posed a lot of questions such as, are the Abyss really the bad guys? What secrets does Teyvat hold that we must discover for ourselves? And who can we truly trust in Teyvat? It is, simply put, Genshin storytelling at its finest, and it finally gave us a sliver of understanding of the events before our arrival in Teyvat. I guess we'll need to clear another 3 nations before we're blessed with another crumb of info. That tends to be how it works, right? In at number 1 we have Chapter 3, Act 5, Akasha Pulses, the Kalpa Flame Rises, Where the Boat to Consciousness Lies. Of all the Archon quests as a whole, you have to say that Summary provided one of the most engaging and consistently brilliant quests that the game has had to offer so far. This was due to a much slower pace, so that characters were given the time to make a connection with the player, ideas and concepts within the narrative were explained with much more clarity, and they were given the time they needed to hit home. Plus, the core concepts, themes, and ideas present were just leaps and bounds ahead of what have come before. From the heated story arc to the infiltration of the academia, everything felt meticulously crafted and engaging. Dialogue heavy, I will grant you, but equally, in a game of this nature, the main questline should be packed with interesting dialogue. This interesting dialogue would all serve as a fitting build-up to the finale where the gloves came off and the player would have to take down a literal god in the form of Scaramouche. I personally thought that the battle itself was a little bit lacking when compared to other encounters, but in terms of narrative, this closing act kept delivering. From Nahida and the Traveller taking down Scaramouche and allowing him to begin life anew as the Wanderer, to Nahida's heart-to-heart with Greater Lord Rukkhadevata. In my opinion, it honestly couldn't have been carried out any better, and you have to give props to Hoyoverse for wrapping this chapter up in style. If summary is anything to go by, then Fontaine is going to be another huge step up, and I for one can't wait. So there you have it guys, every single Genshin Impact Archon quest to this point ranked. Genshin Impact isn't even close to wrapping up its long and winding story, not by a long shot. However, when we finally do call it a day and finally get some answers on what Celestia is, who the sustainer of Heavenly Principles are, and what our sibling has been up to since becoming the head honcho over at the Abyss Order, we will finally be able to look back and see a cavalcade of adventures, endeavours and battles that will have Venti breaking out his lyre and singing our praises. That is, if he hasn't had too much dandelion wine. We hope that you enjoyed this fun list, deciding which Archon quests are the best so far. And if you want more information on Genshin Impact, you need to head over to Genshin Chronicle. I've been Callum, you take care.